Hello and welcome. I'm Riz Khan. The Olympic Games can trace its history back to the days of ancient Greece. But the modern Games has to deal with a very different range of issues both on and off the track, pool or piste. From wars and global warming to doping and transgender athletes, the International Olympic Committee faces a series of obstacles worthy of a steeplechase to reach the finish line of producing a successful summer or winter event. Well, for the first time in 12 years, the world's most important sporting body is about to have a new figure on top of the podium. 7 candidates have entered the race to replace Thomas Bach as the president of the International Olympic Committee. Each candidate will present their pitches to the committee next week before the final decision is made in March. Among them is the Swedish-born British billionaire businessman, environmentalist and president of the International Ski Federation, Johan Eliaschs. We sat down for a fascinating conversation about his vision for the future of the Olympics, including the possible addition of new sports, transgender athletes, and why Africa and the Middle East should expect to be among the host cities under an Eliaschs presidency. Johan Eliaschs, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show. Now, you wear a lot of different hats, but let's go back to September 2024, when you were announced to be in line for presidency of the International Olympic Committee, the IOC. Why are you so keen to have that job?
So, I'm really inspired by sports' ability to unite people in peace, in harmony, working together, where everything seems to be possible, nothing impossible. And it's that inspiration that I find really fascinating, and I think also is something that is unique about sport and the Olympic movement.
You're up against a fairly competitive field of candidates, including His Royal Highness Prince Faisal Al Hussein of Jordan, Lord Sebastian Coe, who's President of World Athletics from the UK, and Juan Antonio Samaranch, whose father ran the IOC for 21 years. What do you have to say about your fellow candidates and why you would be the better pick?
So I think we have a phenomenal field of candidates. In my case, I have a long background and lots of experience in many areas which are very important to the Olympic movement. I have served in governments. I have been very active in sustainability, climate change and climate action. I have been a keen athlete. I have turned around big companies. I managed big companies. I'm used to managing change in a very fast-changing world. I understand media, broadcasting, sponsorship, sports marketing. So I have a unique set of skills. And it wasn't by design, but it just happens to be that when you bring all this together, I am in a way uniquely qualified for the job.
We'll go through all the challenges that you might face if you become president of the IOC, but there are many people who say, why do we still need the Olympics? Why are they still relevant?
And again, it has this unique ability to unify, where athletes come to the games in a peaceful environment, and where the movement is also a very strong voice for bringing awareness to many important issues, and can do a lot more than governments can, big institutions like the United Nations or the G20 has ever been able to do.
Well, the IOC has a fairly checkered history with a lot of controversies, including doping scandals, the issue of bribery allegations linked to rigging of bids to host the Olympics, and then the banning of Russia's anthem, flag and name from international sporting events. Considering all these issues, do you really still want the job?
As I said, I think the Olympic movement is phenomenal, what it does. And yes, it has a rich history and it's had its challenges. And that's also why it's so important to have an experienced and qualified leader of the movement, because the expectations are set very high. And if something goes wrong, the consequences can be very damaging.
What is your vision for the Olympic movement, and how would you ensure that it remains relevant in the coming decades? Let's go to the headlines first, and then we can explore in more detail.
So, I mean, what is very important is that we stay ahead of the curve in every sense, and that is we need to put the sport at the front. Same with the athletes. Strong focus on the athletes. We need to be very good on digital. AI is clearly something that is going to have a profound impact. It's not going to think for us, but we can make a lot of things much more efficient and easier to attain by using AI. Technology, of course, same thing here. We need to embrace new technologies, make sure that when new technologies are invented, bring them into what we do. We need to defend our political neutrality, and that's really important, that athletes are not weaponized for political purposes, because no athlete can ever choose where he or she was born and shouldn't suffer the consequences of their political leaders. Sustainability is another very important topic, and here it is important that we are seen as responsible, that we take action, we do our bit, because climate action is not just we can't sit back and expect governments or other big organizations to do something. What we can do is we can spread awareness, because this is an existential threat that is going to be solved by each individual.
We'll get into some of those issues in just a moment, but I want to touch on the fact that the Olympic Games do bring in billions of dollars for the IOC, and yet there's growing concern about the costs associated with hosting the Olympic Games. So what reforms would you propose in order to address those challenges?
So here I believe we can do more for less, using new technologies, perhaps involving the international federations more in the event delivery. Because let's face it, we do these events day in, day out. The IOC, they do events 2 weeks every 2 years. So are there synergies there? Absolutely. We just need to figure out how we can best take advantage of them. So yes, I believe we can do more for less. And yes, I think with technology opportunities, digital opportunities, clear sponsorship architectures that are constantly developed, and choosing the right strategy for what kind of broadcaster we want to be in the future, there is great scope for generating much more revenue and reduce our cost structure.
Now, Mr. Eliasch, how would you address the growing concerns about the commercialization of the Olympic Games while trying to maintain their integrity and prestige?
Well, I mean, every sport has to be commercial in the way it approaches things, without compromising the integrity of the sport, the athletes, and of course, delivering an event that has the biggest possible reach. And there's always a fine balance between reach and the money, but you can always find the right balance. And here is where we need to think very carefully about how we can, for instance, use streaming more effectively to get a bigger footprint in terms of viewership, and how we can advance storytelling, because there are so many wonderful stories and so many stories that people are interested in between the games, so that we're not just relevant for 2 weeks every 2 years.
Well, TV advertising has long been the mainstay for the Olympic Games, but younger generations, younger audiences tend to consume content across social media rather than the mainstream media or legacy media. So how should the IOC adapt to the digital era?
Well, that's very much something that we adapt to because people consume content differently today. And it may not have shown up entirely in the numbers that we see from linear broadcasters or in terms of long-term sponsorship arrangements. Here, we need to be very much digging in deep, analyzing, and here, I mean, people. Just to give you one trend, people they want highlights, they want short clips. They don't necessarily use television screens, but their mobile phones to consume content. And here, new technologies such as cloud-based delivery of programming is going to be essential. The IOC, they have been doing a great job at taking this to heart, and this is something that we have to intensify and do even more about, so we always stay ahead of the curve.
Mr. Eliasch, I know that for years you've combined your passion for both sports and sustainability through rainforest conservation to combat climate change, even in your role as president of the International Ski Federation. So what steps do you think the IOC should take to make the Olympic Games more environmentally sustainable and to reduce their massive carbon footprint?
So, I mean, what we've done at FIS, we've launched an impact program where we look at ways to minimize the carbon footprint everywhere we go. And here with the IOC, I think, and by the way, they have great programs run by Prince Albert, who has really contributed in this area. And here, I believe what is really important is that wherever we go, we leave a legacy behind. And with the Winter Games, here we have new challenges due to change in the climate, which is profound. And that is, we need to go higher and higher in altitude to have snow security. So we need to take that on board. We also need to make sure that therefore the places we pick are not only used once, but can be used many times. We need a rotation scheme, and this has been invented before me, and it is something which I'm fully behind. And I have already said in my capacity as the biggest federation within the Winter Games, because we deliver more than 50% of the medals in the Winter Games and over 80% in the Paralympic Winter Games. And that is, we will support the locations to make sure that those locations invest in the event delivery. And if we do that, we can play a part as a federation. I hope if I'm elected, this is something that I will really push for. And then we'll have a rotation scheme between a set number of regions, locations, where you rotate the games over a long-term cycle.
On a similar theme, FIFA moved the football calendar to allow Qatar to host a Winter World Cup, and Saudi Arabia will be hosting the tournament in 2034. So would you be prepared to move the Summer Olympics to winter in order to accommodate hot climate countries so that they can host the event?
Well, if you look at the front page of my manifesto, curiously, what you see there is a picture of the globe with Africa, the Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia. And there's a thought behind that, and that is these are places where we haven't been. We've been to South America, we've been to China, we've been to Australia, and of course Europe, North America, and so forth. But we must not forget Africa. It's a big continent with a lot of people, and this is a place we need to go to. Same with the Middle East. We've never been in the Middle East. and we haven't been to India. Now, some people may say that this would be challenging because of calendar issues, lack of infrastructure in some places, etc. But careful planning, and if we plan ahead, I am convinced that we can overcome every obstacle and deliver magnificent games. In fact, wherever we go in the world.
Well, Saudi Arabia is fast becoming known as a location for hosting top international events, from football and boxing to golf and tennis. Would you welcome a bid from Saudi Arabia to host the Olympic Games?
We should encourage each and everyone to apply, and I would say in the case of Saudi Arabia, their commitment and dedication to sport is fantastic. And I remember years ago when they started promoting the idea of actually doing snow-based events. People said that can't be true. Where do you find snow in Saudi Arabia? But they actually do have snow, and they do have mountains reaching 2,600 meters, and they have invested in building up ski resorts. So yes, everything is possible. If Saudi Arabia applied, I think we should take that very, very seriously.
Earlier, you mentioned that the Olympic Games can be a platform for unity, peace, and justice. If so, how can the IOC make judgments on who can participate at times of geopolitical conflict, such as we have with Russia, Ukraine, or Israel, Gaza?
Yeah, so here there is one very important principle, and that is athletes, they can't choose where they were born. So, at the same time, they should never be politicized or weaponized for political purposes. That's sacrosanct for me and for, I hope, most people. And here we have to defend sports political neutrality. Of course, we are always going to tread in political waters, but we have to defend our political neutrality because otherwise it's a slippery slope, which does not end up in a good place. Here we have a special program for independent neutral athletes, which worked very well during Paris. And if it has to be used, then of course, this should be used, but we should never be drawn into politics.
The vast majority of Olympic athletes and audiences watching at home want to be sure that they're watching a fair competition devoid of cheating and doping scandals and so on. If you become IOC president, how would you reassure them?
So I think here, I mean, we have very good anti-doping agencies in WADA, and we have very stringent testing programs to make sure that this is very much monitored and to avoid anyone cheating. Of course, another topic that has come up is with women's sport. And how, for me, at least, very important that we ring fence women's sport. Now, this is a separate topic, but I bring that up because it's been talked about much. And here it is very much, we have to protect women, ring fence their sport, because if not, it becomes something else. And that can never be the case.
Well, that became a major issue in Paris when the Olympics were held there, where the issue of transgender athletes became a big debate. How would you approach that particular issue?
Very much science-based, not based on trends or ideology. It has to be science-based. It's the only fair way of doing it.
There's only one woman in the lineup of 7 candidates to be IOC president. What would you do to promote greater gender equality, not just in the Olympic participation, but also in the IOC leadership roles?
I think across the board here, the IOC have done a very good job at promoting gender equality and making sure that you have balanced gender participation. This is something that I very much promoted also within the FIS. I say here that it should have been more women in this race, and hopefully in years to come next time there will be more women candidating for the presidency.
When we look at athletes across the global spectrum, there's still a huge discrepancy in terms of the resources available to competitors, from training facilities and equipment to ideal nutrition to the latest scientific training techniques and even access to sports medicine to deal with injuries in the best way possible. So what can the IOC do to level the playing field so that athletes from developing nations have the same kind of opportunities as those from established sporting nations?
This is why the IOC have solidarity programs to proliferate and to help and invest in countries that are developing from the developing world. And this is really important. And there's one thing that I've always said is that within the International Ski Federation, no matter where you come from, where your federation is based, we're all equally special. And that is very important to me. So we should all have equal opportunity as far as it is possible. Equal opportunity training, equal opportunity to participation. Now, of course, we're not there yet, and that's not going to happen overnight. But we must strive to achieve that.
Now, I know, Mr. Eliasch, you're a very enthusiastic and accomplished skier, and you'll know that snowboarding was kind of looked down upon compared with traditional skiing for a long time. And there are many sports fans who have strong views about what sports should be added or could be added to the Olympic Games. In recent years, we've had BMX, skateboarding, and even breakdancing added to the Summer Games, while, of course, snowboarding has long been now a part of the Winter Olympic Games. How do you get the balance right between appealing to younger generations with these newer sports while still preserving the tradition of the competition?
Yeah, I mean, that's really important because we compete against lots of other sports. And we have to remain super attractive. Yeah, here it's we need to bring in be open-minded and bring in new sports. It's very, very important. I mean, at FIS, for instance, I brought in free ride. Why did I do that? Because it's super attractive. It has a great following, and I mean the television pictures that you get are fantastic, and that is what we need. Similarly, I mean, if we look here at new format, what I would do is promote relays with able-bodied and Paralympic athletes, because that will help. It's to proliferate Paralympics, lift that up more, and create more interest. And the more interest we can have in the Paralympics, the better it is for sport as a whole. So yeah. It's small, sometimes big ideas in this direction. And of course, there are many sports out there that we should continue bringing in. But of course, we can't do everything in one go. So we need to do this gradually, step by step.
Now, I'd like to get your view on just a couple of sports that have strong support for inclusion in the Olympic Games. They require more skill than athleticism. So let's have a look at esports and darts. Now, why shouldn't dart players take their place alongside, for example, archers in the Olympic Games?
So if we start with esports, this is something which has grown immensely in popularity. There's over 260 million participants in esports, and that is very complementary for the Olympic movement, and that is why we have a strong push there. And we'll have the first esports Olympics very soon in Saudi Arabia, by the way. Now, when it comes to darts and other new sports, there is obviously a long list of sports that want to participate. Again, this has to be done step by step. It has to be evaluated, and that is an ongoing process, which, by the way, the IOC have been very good at.
Now, I'd like you to take a step back from your potential role as president of the IOC to that of just a spectator of sports, because there are many people who believe the Olympics have drifted quite far from their original spirit of just fair, free international competition, now marred very much by politicking and scandals. What chance is there to get the Olympic Games right back to their roots?
Well, it should always be based on pure competition, but how we display the sport, that is constantly evolving with social media, with different, storytelling, which is very important, particularly to remain relevant in between the games. Youth Olympic Games, qualifying series, etc. So the competitive spirit, that principle, that will always be there. I can't see how that would ever change. Now, for us to remain competitive with other sports, it's equally very important that we stay ahead of the curve, and this is where the whole, shall we say, sports environment has to be closely observed, and we have to keep up with the latest trends and invest in the latest technology, and that's the foundation for what we do.
Well, we wish you well for your IOC candidacy. I wonder, will you have time to devote to all the other things you do, especially sustainability projects like Cool Earth, the organization you co-founded for rainforest conservation? Will you be able to cram all this in since you have so much on your plate all the time?
I think today there are many very good people involved in these activities, so I'm sure they will continue that work with or without me. So, but the one thing I am really committed to, and that is proliferating our voice in climate action, to spread awareness and getting things done, because here we can do a lot.
Well, Johan Eliasch, it was a real pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Johan Eliasch there on his bid to become president of the International Olympic Committee. Well, we talked about some potential new sports for the Games, with BMX, skateboarding and snowboarding winning their place at the Olympic schedule in recent years, and breakdancing making its debut at last year's Paris Olympics. But did you know that as different events come and go, some of those which have fallen out of favour included tug of war, hot air ballooning, live pigeon shooting and painting. That admittedly was a bit like watching paint dry. And at the first modern Olympics at the English village of Much Wenlock in 1867, the most popular event was called tilting at the ring, in which riders on horseback used a lance to unhook a small metal ring from a wooden crossbar. I wonder if it's time for that one to return. Well, we know who to ask if he gets the job. I'm Riz Khan from me and the team. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.